One last thing. Everybody make themselves look presentable.
Yeah.
I've got my shirt. I'm presentable. Presenting to the presentables. Ladies and presentables, we present the presence of the present moment of us. Hello, this is Scott Meyer here, along with my good friends AJ and SquidJedi from Stardust Community. You might also recognize them from the Reactaholics Podcast and here and there around the internet, if you happen to be around the internet in your spare time, as we procrastinators often do. And today we've come here for a very special time because it's a very, very special month, and we've been bringing up some particular topics, and mainly because we have had personal experiences with it, and there's various things we want to talk about it, and we've had some failings. We were originally going to do this as a Reactaholics episode, but due to Chris having difficulties, our director, he is unfortunately dropping out for the time being due to the virus outbreak. Sad but true. But I've organized my friends to come together to talk about autism now. Yes, we're going to be talking about autism, our personal experiences, and our thoughts, and how it's portrayed in the media. So, would you like to introduce yourselves, lady and gentlemen?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
You can go first.
Can I say my real name?
You can.
I'm Brooks. I was diagnosed with Asperger's when I was 5 years old.
All right, Asperger's at 5 years old. That's a good way to start. AJ.
Yep, I'm AJ, and same thing here with I got diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome at 5 years old.
Huh, well, what a coinky dink. And as for me, I am Calum Macritchie. McLean is my middle name. And I've been diagnosed with autism for as long as I can remember. I was very young when I was diagnosed, so I can't really remember. If I wanted the exact details, I'll probably have to ask my parents.
Wait. I did not know that you're autistic too.
Yeah, pretty much. I think for reasons I'll explain later, my parents, as parenting things do, they don't pick up on these things until they find certain traits and then ask the doctors for that sort of thing. Yes. But anyway, we have all had personal experiences. We're here to raise awareness of it because autism is not something negative. We see it as something really positive. In fact, we see it as an advantage of sorts. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yes. In fact,
yes.
I'd even argue it's a superpower. If you've ever seen my interview with Ron, I have this personal quote that I like. With great disabilities comes great abilities, as you will find out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Can I start on how autism has been represented in the media?
We were going to do that, I suppose. Yeah. Autism in the media. Topic number 1.
Okay. So there are not a lot of autistic awareness in the media, but there are like some people who are like autistic and that I want to talk about. Deku from My Hero Academia. He,
Yes.
like me, has some semblance of autism. He is nervous. He talks out loud. He thinks a lot, and he kind of reflects my own story. His story reflects my own.
Yes. If you were to compare him with an anime character, it would easily be Deku. There's always that one friend you can just compare it with an anime character. With you, yeah, I can easily see you as Deku. Yes. Just someone who just looks up to these other heroes for inspiration, just aspires to be one of the greats. Yes.
And also, like, in regular show, I think Pops is, like, from regular show, Pops, the the guy with the big head. Yeah,
The big
I think
blast
he is autistic too. And you know what? I actually think that you're kind of like him.
Oh, really? I should really get to watching regular show to see your point being proven.
And that's all I know about autistic in medium in the media.
All right. So, are there people with Asperger's portrayed in the media?
So that same thing. I'm talking about Asperger's and autism. That's the same thing.
It's the same thing. All right. I was just going to ask. People.
That's what I meant about Deku. That's what I meant about Deku and having Asperger's.
Right. So there a lot of people today would probably ask if there was a difference between Asperger's and autism, or if they're one and the same.
If I can just say, I think it's just because since I'm a '90s, since I'm a '90s baby and I got diagnosed with that, it's at that time they were two separate things because there's different levels of autism. You were either autistic, Asperger, or there was a third one where it's like pervasive non-disorder, and that's like very low on the spectrum. But now the term is like you're on the spectrum, you're autistic. There's not really a term or name for it, but I'm still going to go as Asperger's just because that's how I was diagnosed.
They are all the same, yet they are in separate categories. Guess
that's
what?
Because they would have, like, some people on the spectrum have different traits and different severity. Right. Like for me, since I was diagnosed and my mom early intervened, I was able to grow out of some traits, but keep some traits on a lower level.
All right. I was just going to say, I think we're getting a bit theological here. We found a trinity. Think of it like a shamrock. As for, I suppose if I were to mention any characters portrayed in the media who has autism, I can think of a few examples. The first one that comes to my mind is Mumble the Penguin from Happy Feet. You remember Happy Feet, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
Yes. They don't mention it directly, but one can easily watch that film and just have a few comparisons to, sort of these black sheep situations. This is a culture of penguins in this movie where they, part of their culture is that they sing to each other. And if the songs are in harmony, guess what? Boom, you're a love couple. But the father of one egg, he accidentally drops his egg, and it comes out a bit differently. He instead of singing, he dances. So he's a terrible singer, but he is an exceptional dancer. And there's various scenes where I think, looking back at them, I think, yes, you could look back at that and just think, yeah, that could be like people with autism. Like, obviously, there's the school, and there's being a bit of a black fish. There's one other scene that fascinates me in the Happy Feet film. There is a scene where they approach this successful scene teacher named Mrs. Astrakhan. If anyone can, Mrs. Astrakhan can. Obviously, they're trying to get him to sing, but what they unintentionally do is let him just let his heart out with his dancing even more, which is ironically inspiring. And along his journey, he meets some other characters who accept him for who he is, and he eventually proves to society that he can stand out, he can make a difference. Other characters I can think of on the top of my head, Newt Scamander from Fantastic Beasts and the Where to Find Them franchise. Say what you want about this franchise, but you can definitely look at some of his traits, and he gets along more well with animals. Come to think of it, that's kind of like Radagast Brown too, isn't it? All right, something about people who are more socially acceptable with animals than with other people. That tends to be a trait with fantasy flicks. Also, also like in that film that we do see Newt attempt to crack out of his social shell, and he's a great introverted character, if you know what I mean. Another example before we move on to AJ, and this is a recent example that I can think of. I don't think any of you have seen this, but recently I've been watching and mentioning this TV adaptation of the New Testament called The Chosen, and the way they've depicted Matthew, they've made Matthew have certain traits that could be associated with Asperger's and autism. The way he struggles socially, the way he interacts with dogs, and little habits like checking his sheets and his things to use to calculate things. So the way that he speaks. At first I was thinking, okay, this might be a bit forced because seeing how this is a New Testament adaptation, they're obviously taking some creative liberties. But from what I've heard, there was some really good feedback from that. So it actually works to make him more relatable and to raise awareness of it. So power to us.
But I have one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there was this like video about Deku and how he reflects on another person's life who has Asperger's, and it's a really good video, and I recommend anyone who see this. It's called My Asperger's Academia.
Oh wow! I'll need to investigate that after this. Yes. AJ, are there any characters in the media that either have symptoms of autism that you'd like to raise awareness of, or not so much mentioned, but you've noticed personally?
So I don't really headcanon any characters just because, like, I'd like to hear it from the creators or, like, see really hard evidence, but I would say that media has increased the awareness by making more characters that actually are diagnosed with autism. The only character I could think of that I would headcanon myself is Lilo from Lilo and Stitch.
Oh,
really? Oh,
yeah.
It does actually make sense.
Yes.
Yeah, like, they haven't confirmed, I don't think they ever confirmed, but, like, I do see a lot of aspects of somebody on the spectrum from her. But that's just my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That actually makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Especially when she's introducing her new friends to her other friends.
Like, she's struggling making friends. She has specific interests. Her sister has to take care of her, even though, like, she's a kid, so that's expected. But she's still a lovable, relatable character.
And the worst part about it, the government had to tried to take her away.
Yeah.
Like many of the Hawaiian residents were taken away from their families.
My. And they're not really portrayed as villains, they're just doing their job. That's the tragic part. Yes. But that's besides the point. The point is there's been an increasing awareness of the people of autism, and we're here to acknowledge it. Some other characters have just come to mind. Sorry. These are actually two of my favorite films, actually. Amelie and Forrest Gump. Ever heard of those films?
Yes.
I've heard of Forrest Gump.
Aye, Forrest Gump. Yeah, you know what it is. As stupid is as stupid does. Yes. That is just one of the most quotable movies ever. I think Forrest Gump would be a great example for this talk, because he's reflecting on his life about and it's just all the things he's been able to achieve in spite of not appearing too intelligent and being a bit slow-witted. He can run really fast. I don't even need to mention that famous quote that you're all thinking of right now. He can do good at sports. He got in the army, and he's compassionate and selfless. He has a successful fishing business, and he's had success out of success, and he's been an inspiration for many people, to the point where he's unintentionally bumped into iconic moments of American history. And eventually he has to... No, I don't think I'll spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it just goes to show how much he's able to achieve and how much he's able to influence the people around him in spite of his, at first, apparent weaknesses. But he has some great strengths. Like I said before, great weaknesses, great strengths. Hey.
Wait, but actually, I hope I'm not talking about Deku too much, but I never actually got to talk about him.
Oh, I suppose you haven't to the extent that I have.
Yeah.
I'll briefly mention. Yes, Deku, go before I change my mind.
So Deku was diagnosed at a young age without a quirk, and you see where I'm going at.
Yes.
And he was treated like an outcast. No one liked him, but one day, one person decided to take a chance on him and said that he could be a person in life and he could do amazing things, and young man, you too can be a hero.
And he did that with an extremely strange smile he keeps all the time.
Yeah. But he earned that. He didn't just, no. The person who told him he could be a hero, he didn't just give him the power to be a hero. He earned that by going to a beach and getting all the junk off of it.
Yes. Truly inspiring, especially when you consider all that he goes through throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Absolutely inspiring. We'll need to investigate Deku. We need a thematic analysis website just to talk about Deku. And briefly mention Amelie. This is a film I'd recommend. It's a French film, and it's about a girl who's struggling in life, social awkwardnesses, yet she's compelled to make other people happy. And it's a really delightful film, and she's such a delightful protagonist, and people often say she's one of the best film protagonists ever. So, power to the women and to autistic people. Vive la France! Even though we're Americans and Scottish people. Sorry, French people, we're a bit dignified for various reasons. I suppose in recent years, autism has also been introduced to younger children. Case in point, Julia from Sesame Street.
Yeah, I remember her debut and how she got over all the social media.
So Julia is often in the top 10 moments where kids shows took things seriously. Watching it again, it's a really good introduction for children and potential adults who are watching it and trying to understand it. And it helps that you got these innocent characters, and they genuinely like Julia as a person, but they're noticing that she's not interacting with them immediately. She's a bit uncanny to strangers. She gets carried away when having fun a bit, and luckily there's a supervisor there to tell a big bird about the specifics about Julia, and they eventually warm up to her, which I find it really delightful and a great way to be introduced to that. And apparently she's been in some of the Sesame Street merchandising. So I guess to conclude this part, what are your own opinions on autism being portrayed in the media as of recently?
I've only seen a YouTube video on how it's been treated in the medium, but I've heard that there are like bad stereotypes from like The Good Doctor, where he's like a perfect genius, he gets nothing wrong, he's flawless, and that is pretty harmful.
Oh, that's a good point. I think we should briefly talk about the bad representations, because we mentioned the ones done right. Now it's time to talk about the ones done wrong for anybody watching this. I think that's a good idea.
If I may, actually, my mom has been watching The Good Doctor, and I caught one episode where he's struggling with driving, and that's something I've struggled with as well. So I don't know if like he's being considered a bad representation because I actually saw him being in like the top 10 autistic characters in TV media.
I think it's a bit of a mix and match. On the one hand,
Probably.
he got these certain traits right, but from what I'm hearing, they didn't get these other things right. That's something I've been hearing from some other characters representing autism in some recent, I don't know, Netflix dramas, where they say, oh man, they got these things right, but they also got these things stupidly, stereotypically wrong. Yeah.
To be fair, autism is different for everyone. There's somebody who's has it very severe, some people who have it very low and won't be considered autistic. Like when I told people, they'd be like, "Oh, I've never considered. I just thought you were a shy girl." But that's because my mom early intervened. She is a speech therapist. She got me all the IEP programs, so I learned to improve a lot of things. So I think it just depends on the person and their autism severity.
Yeah, myself, I'm quite low. Yes, sorry. What?
Well, I'm low, but my entire life, I always thought I was extroverted. I was very fearless as a child, and I always was like the charmer, the guy. But as I got older, I realized I was very introverted, and I could be very nervous, very anxious, very fearful, very and my thoughts would go in my head, and I would have so many thoughts, and I'm right now at a healthy spot right now, but I was at a point where there was so much thoughts in my head I couldn't handle it.
Yikes.
And I could get stuck on a certain thought sometimes.
Certain thought. That must be a good way to get carried away.
And I analyze stuff a lot. Analyze them to death.
That can be both a blessing and a curse from what I'm hearing.
So I basically became Deku.
That's a good description, yes. It's interesting what you said about introvert and extrovert. I can hardly tell sometimes. What was the name of the in-between? Is it ambivert?
Ambivert. I'm an
ambivert. Ambivert. Yeah, that makes sense. Because you'll notice people like us, on the one hand, you're standing out in the crowd, but then on the other hand, you're not sure how to approach certain situations. I think I'm an extrovert who... Okay.
You are the most extrovert.
You bet I am, buddy.
But I heard that it's not common for people who have autism to be extroverted.
I mean, I can have my quiet moments as well. There's often a lot of time where I'm thinking to myself, and I suppose my symptoms, as it were, I found out I tend to ask a lot more questions to better understand a few things, and I have this tendency to over-explain things to the point where if I talk too much, my parents will often give me a signal. Or if I'm getting carried away with something like being a bit too goofy or whatnot. And sometimes I'm not even intentionally being goofy or intentionally being carried away. I just want to explain it as it is, but then my mum will give me a sort of look. And
I also used to mutter to myself and used to like talk out loud and like talk a lot. I used to mutter too. Well, yeah,
Yes, and sometimes whenever I get caught up, my mum will probably just squeeze me just lightly, as parents do, and this is quite annoying, but discipline is necessary, as I've learned. So, as much as it annoyed me, and still does, it's absolutely necessary. It's annoying because I'm like, what did I do? I'm not intentionally trying to do something wrong! And something relating to that, I think it's no secret that I'm quite a loud person.
I'm loud too.
Yeah, so believe it or not, I consider this to be my normal talking voice. Yeah, I know, right? This was just practically made for the theater. So on the one hand, it absolutely works.
Have you tried acting?
have I not tried acting? There's something I'm going to get to. But yes, it works tremendously well whenever I'm on stage or whenever I'm doing voice impressions and whatnot. But during some certain social situations, there are occasions when I'm a bit too loud, and my parents say, quiet down, and I'm just like, how much more quiet do you want me to be? There's what other traits have I noticed? I also tend to get anxious fairly easily about a few things. I think I remember, as much as I love Disneyland at times, there was a few bits I didn't want to go back to because they scared me a little bit. But eventually we got brave enough to overcome them. I think a few other things around the house when I was much younger I didn't like or didn't want to go near, but as soon as I managed to get over it, just get over it. Like, believe it or not, I used to not like showers because I didn't like water on my head. But now I'm just like, yeah, I'll just get a bucket. I bathe in it. But I have baths, of course. Don't worry, I'm not completely manky for 10 years.
Well, whenever I get anxious, it's a paranoia thought. It's like I have been going through the most stressful months, the stressful 4 months. It has been nonstop. It first started in January, and then it just never stopped. It went away, and then it went up, and then went down. It went up and went down.
Let me guess, the exams and prelims.
No, it wasn't that. It was this paranoia. It was this paranoia thoughts about how I thought that I watched this video. I watched this documentary, and it said that the sun is a deadly killer, and it could kill you with its light. So that got me thinking that we could all be dead, and that got me so anxious that I thought that we would all die from that.
That actually reminds me of another experience. When I was in primary 6 or 7, there was this advert about spreading germs, wash your hands, and I pretty much became a bit of a germaphobe. So I guess another symptom I picked up, but I'm getting over it, is that I guess to an extent I still do, I tend to get carried away sometimes. Yes, a bit more cautionary than usual. Although this does transition well to certain abilities, like the fact that I am cautious and that I can be really observant, which I guess has helped me with the artworks, yes.
Well, I'm very insightful and observant myself.
Yes, and I guess that's a great transition to the way we think, because my parents said, I've learned a lot just from being with you, and there's so many insights you can get from people like us. In fact, I have a book here called The Reason I Jump. Ever heard of this book?
No.
I do recall you telling me why you brought up this, because I'm pretty sure I know where this is going.
Yeah, so this is a book written by Naoki Higashida. At the time,
it's Japanese.
It was a Japanese kid who wrote this, and it was translated by David Mitchell.
I have a high respect for the Japanese.
Yeah, we all do. We all have a respect for the Japanese. The anime, the culture, Nintendo, what's not to love?
Yeah.
So, this is a book by Naoki Higashida, at the time, 13 years old, talking about his autism. The book comes in the form of question and answers, with occasional short stories from his imagination and experiences. So, for example, he'll answer questions such as, what's the reason you jump? To which he'll answer, what do you think I'm feeling when I'm jumping up and down, clapping my hands? I bet you think I'm not really feeling anything much beyond the manic glee all over my face, but when I'm jumping, it's as if my feelings are going upwards to the sky. Really, my urge to be swallowed up by the sky is enough to make my heart quiver. when I'm jumping, I can feel my body parts really well too. My bounding legs, my clapping hands, and that makes me feel so good. So that's one reason why I jump. And recently I noticed another reason. People with autism tend to react physically to feelings of happiness and sadness. So when something happens that affects me emotionally, my body sees it up as if struck by lightning. And so he goes on. And there's many other brilliant insights from him. I don't agree with everything he says, but it's brilliant insight.
Yeah. And you want to know how I think? I always connect people together. I always connect, like, things in fiction with reality, like, things around in the entire universe together, everything.
Connect the dots. Yes.
That's why I always, like, think I'm like a character, or, like, I try and say, like, you're like a character, because it's like a reflection of a person. So you're probably like Pops or Arthur Christmas.
Arthur, oh my goodness gracious, right. Arthur Christmas, that is a character me and my family keep comparing myself to.
And that's why I search up this personality type thing called MBTI, where I look at personalities and I try and look at other people's personalities and I connect to them.
You did that with
You're
me
an
recently.
ENFP, I'm INFJ, and I don't know what
AJ's is.
I don't know what AJ is.
What was that?
Our personality testing.
Oh, I've never taken it, so I don't know.
Well, I recommend it.
Okay.
And I think that my brain is wired that I just see everything connected together. And do you think that that's a form of autism?
That makes sense. That makes sense. Everything has a design and an order to it, and you are one of the more observant ones who notice that. Yes.
Yeah, that's why I always say I have a reflection of myself, or like I'm like Deku, or I'm like anyone else, because I feel like that, like, 2D animation can be like a mirror for someone.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Like a 2D mirror. But when you're in reality, it's the 3D. There's more layers, more life experience to you that is different from that character, but it's the same reflection.
Wow, you have much more insight on animation than I ever thought you would. My. So going back to the reason I jump, and the reason I say I'm going back to this is because it was, oh gosh, I think it was 2 years ago now, the National Theatre of Scotland contacted me to partake in a theatrical adaptation of The Reason I Jump. This was because of my constant participations to these theatrical groups in Eden Court Theatre here in Inverness. Fun fact, that's where Karen Gillan, who plays the blue lady from Guardians of the Galaxy, comes from.
Nebula?
Yeah, Nebula. That's the one. Nebula went to Eden Court Theatre, yes. So, at first, it was around about the end of my high school days. They noticed my talents and they invited me over out of a very select few that they decided to have. It was myself and several other people who have personally have autism, have experienced it. There were 2 young ladies from Edinburgh and this Canadian man who happened to be living in Glasgow. We all went to Glasgow to the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland to try out this idea that this director named Graham Eatough had at the time, to make a theatrical adaptation of The Reason I Jump, talk about our personal experience, go through some various theatrical activities, and come up with some ideas on how we could adapt this. Because at first you might think, well, how do you adapt a book like this? The way we did it was that it was a year later or so that they called me back for a full-time job as a theatrical actor, which was fantastic, working with the National Theatre of Scotland at this Roxvilla studio. It was an amazing experience. I moved away and I lived in my own flat. I was living the life. And So obviously there's a few things I was living, but I was living the life, and the end result basically was that we went to this meadow, North Kelvin Meadows, which was this community-owned place, and it was going to be used for a theatre because nature plays a huge part in this book and with autistic people in general. We had this Dutch designer make these wooden fences that you could practically go through, but it at the same time encourages you to just go through the fences like it was a maze. They've set up so basically this was an outdoor theater piece where you go around the maze and you see various performance pieces repeated over and over again. And these theatrical pieces would be consist of the four main stars, including myself, reciting these scripted performances, which are a mixture of our own biographies and our own thoughts of the book. So it's quite a unique blend. Occasionally a bell would ring and we'd act out the short stories that were in this book, like the Alien and Autism Man. And then we'd do it again and again. And at the end of the day, there'd be a bell would ring again. We all get to the main stage, and we perform the final story, which is about this girl, this kid who has in a loving family, unfortunately dies, meets God, and then sees their mother grieving them. Then God offers them an opportunity to come back to them as a reborn child of theirs, but at the cost of their previous memories. The child accepts and does so. And I was God. It was greatly insightful, and it was great to raise awareness of autism. I even made it to the BBC News. I kid you not. I know.
Really?
Yeah. If you go to my YouTube channel, my friend managed to record a brief interview. So I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't heard of this. But at the time, it was just one of those things where it was popular enough to raise awareness in the local area of Glasgow, basically. So I was quite proud of myself for what I've been able to achieve, and it was for this, all because of this book. And recently we've been involved, sort of, before it got deleted, with this documentary about the reason I jump. I don't even know if it's going to come out or not, but there you go. I'd highly recommend this book because it's absolutely fantastic.
But I have a theory, and so many people would absolutely hate this. But I think that the Emoji Movie could have been brilliant.
Oh yes, you keep mentioning this. Yes, this is actually the perfect opportunity to mention this. This is a topic that SquidJedi had mentioned to me and not to anyone else, because... Explain.
Well... Okay, so the character, what I forgot his name. He has quirks.
It's literally called Meh.
Yeah, it's Meh. But yeah, he has quirks, but society doesn't treat him right. So he tries to go fix himself, and I think that, and then he accepts who he is for his quirks. So I think that if you look at it that way, then it could be a positive representation of autism.
It could be. And you suggested that if the movie was handled differently in a way to represent social anxiety and not giving into trends with the phones, then it would have been at least a decent movie. A surprisingly decent one.
Yeah. What do you think about this, AJ?
I've never seen the Emoji Movie, but I have heard, like, the response towards it, and yeah, I'm sure it could have been better, given the idea about a movie about technology, maybe go into the problem of children, young people being on technology all the time, maybe show the pros and cons.
Yeah, instead it was just focusing on the cons just because it was trendy, and it sucks because of that.
Yeah. But it did have that, like, autism, like, codedness in it.
At the very least, if they had focused on that and maybe some social and political commentary, it would have been decent. And Sony, you need to hire this young man here, because that would have instantly improved your movie. Although you're making promises with this Into the Spider-Verse, so what do we know?
And also that new movie, Connected.
Oh yes, that seems intriguing. Wait a minute, Connected? That goes into the exact same category that we just did. Basically, is Connected the Emoji Movie but better?
But it doesn't seem like it's going to focus on autism.
True, there is that, but hey ho, there is still hope. Chin up, hey ho. Okay, what else can we mention? I suppose.
No, I just thought, is there more, or are we done?
I think we could talk about, pardon me, Bert, personal experiences with it, because I want to hear AJ and her own experiences, because she recently had an interview with our good friend Ron, where she talked a lot about her experiences with autism.
Okay. Basically my story is, again, around 3, which is when I really began to talk, I would stare off, and my family thought I was having like seizures, but my mom, who is into speech therapy right now, she knew something was up, so she took me to see someone, and they're like, she could possibly have autism or Asperger's syndrome, and she got me all the help, all the IEP programs. I read in my file that they considered I would be more on the pervasive side, but I consider myself Asperger's just because I fit more with the traits. And then I guess I never knew for a while until I was like 13 or 11 when I went to church with my family, but they wanted me to dress up. I didn't feel comfortable about that, so I had to wear one of my sister's dresses. Suddenly, I began to have a meltdown over that, and when I asked my mom why did I act like that, I've never had that happen before, she explained to me that I am autistic. And then recently, in October, I got diagnosed with panic disorder. So not only am I autistic, I also have panic disorder. And I still consider autism my superpower. So yeah, if any of you guys haven't checked out Getting Real with Ron, he has his own YouTube channel. I did talk to him more about my story.
Yo, let's be real. Go check out his channel. He is so much fun to imitate. I suppose I could talk about my personal experiences with autism, because I've got quite a story with that. As I said before, as far as I can remember, I've been diagnosed with autism. And this became evident to me when I was at school. See, the way that my education worked was that in my much younger days, and all the way up to mid-high school, I'd have these support teachers telling me what to do, how specifically to do it, and in what order. And they were very friendly, very supportive, very kind. So the way that my education worked in my younger years is that I had this timetable. Yeah, did you ever get those visual timetables?
Was it like taped onto your desk?
So not quite. The way it works is that in the school there would be these pictures with this strapped-on timetable. So it was started with now is the writing time. Now it's time for the music lessons. Now it's the break time. And it had a picture of an apple. So okay, time to eat the apple. Now it's time for math. Now it's time for drawing. Now it's time for writing. Now it's time for lunch. And usually I'd leave early just to be with the family and during other parts of the primary school term, I would go to these little clubs to get out of class for a bit, like a Room 6 club, where there would be all these soft toys, these books, and some free fruit. And that seemed to work. And the Room 6 club stuff stopped when I was in primary 7, and in high school this sort of continued in a more nuanced way with where we'd follow the timetable, and then every lunchtime we could freely choose whether or not to go to this quiet place called the Hub. Although ever since I've left, it's become rather noisy. Yeah. You know high school students. I mean, when I first went there, it was library quiet. Now, ever since I've left, it became quiet. Yeah, check out this Toonstop thing on YouTube. So that's kind of irritating and funny at the same time. I managed to make some good friends who are autism and still show a few traits themselves, but I managed to conquer a few gaps. I have this friend who's autistic, and he's practically hasn't changed, but at the same time, he's maturing. Other things I've learned. Oh yeah. During exams and prelims, I would have extended time, and but despite these setbacks, I would have these superpowers. I guess this is a good point to talk about the superpowers we autistic people have. So, as an autistic person, I think my senses are enhanced. Like there were instances.
Yes.
There's instances.
I can feel the entire environment around me. I can feel off of people. I can feel like I'm inside a person's body. I can feel like I am that person.
Sorry, inside a person's body. Sorry, I'm not dirty-minded. Sorry.
Yeah.
And for me,
I think it's called chloravinions. No, chloravinions.
Okay, thanks for that. So I guess for me, it was more or less for smelling, because whenever we go somewhere, I usually pick up a scent, and my family.
Yes.
I don't smell that. What are you on about? I'm like, I smell burnt wood, or something smells like marshmallows, or when we're passing by in public, something smells like strawberries. What's that smell? And my family said, what on earth is that dog picking up on now? And this has helped me with cooking, I suppose, as well as added my delight with cooking.
So, can I talk about my life story?
Hold on. We will shortly. I'm just trying to think of, was there anything else?
I'm sorry if I interrupted.
No, it's fine. We'll get to your life story. What other powers have I noticed? I tend to daydream a lot, but this has helped me with my imagination. Observation and attention to detail, and seeing things from a different perspective, and being able to accept many people, old and young, and understanding other people of different disabilities. Yeah, I have that privilege of understanding even someone who has like cerebral paralysis. Even though I don't have it personally, I have that, that sort of spiritual bondage of knowing that sort of experience. I think it's kind of a privilege just to know that. And I've seen people with Down syndrome who are really good at mathematics over here. And there's a friend of mine who still goes to college, and she has Down syndrome, but she is the sweetest girl ever. Everybody loves her. She is absolutely fantastic. So yes, we all have our superpowers, and I've managed to work mine into strength and to enhance what I've been able to be capable of. And I guess that's my sort of life story with autism. Despite anxieties and difficulties, I have managed to find my strengths and my quirks, as you keep preaching in the right way. And speaking of the quirks, I think it's long time that you gave your origin story.
Well, I was diagnosed at 5 years old, like I said, and like I said, I was very extroverted. I fit in with everyone. No one would guess I would have Asperger's.
My.
But as I got older, I did become more introverted, and not a lot of people hung out with me that much. And later, one time, I was done with school. I was on the floor crying and angry and crying and just done with school. So I had to go homeschooled, and yeah, that's it.
Was there anything more to explain, like how you overcame certain obstacles and how you've managed to accept who you are?
And also, I was afraid of 2 movies, and they're Coraline and Tusk.
I can see why. Yes, they are terrifying movies.
Yes, and I thought of I've been thinking of Coraline for the past 8 years. I have had it in my brain for 8 years.
Regardless of whether you're autistic or not, just the things that frightened us for such a long time.
Yeah, and I get stuck on it, and I didn't want to share it with anyone, but I decided to share it in probably 2014, and then I got help, but I had paranoia of a lot of things. I guess that's a part of my personality, but I was afraid of anything that was fictional or any idea of fiction that could come to life, and yeah.
Yeah, there's many things we know aren't real, but the concept, frightening.
Yeah.
I was about to say I had a similar experience just because with my panic disorder, when I got diagnosed, I tried to start off with no medicine, and just rely on techniques, and that ended up with me having little to no sleep at all. I'd go days without sleep.
Wait. I think I might have panic disorder too, because in December, I one time had no night of sleep, and then I kept waking up in the middle of the night, throughout all of January and February, and I think that the panic disorder, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I think that the panic disorder does have a thing with how I got traumatized by that sun killing everyone thing. So
well,
I do have...
I was just going to say, I would recommend you go see a therapist before determining what you have, because it took a little bit, 2 months for me and my mom to figure out what was going on with me. It wasn't until
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I have a therapist, so...
Did they say what you have?
No, I just discovered this.
Okay. So back to my thing. So when Joker came out, I was still going to movies, and I went to go see it with my best friend. That is a very hard movie to get through. It's really good, but
I want to see it.
I don't recommend going if you're a little sensitive with mental health because when I saw it, me and my friend left like after a third of the movie because at first I was just, uncomfortable with it. Not because it's a terrible movie, but like what he was going through and like his mental health, that kind of got me a little anxious. And then, of course, that led to nightmares, not being able to sleep, the what if thoughts, like
very
what
uneasy film.
Yeah, it's really hard to get through. So, yeah. Luckily, I've been able to see more movies, like, since I've been getting help. But, yeah, movies can sometimes affect you.
Yes, they can. And the inner fanboy in me just wanted to see Joker, but now that you said it, I never want to see Joker ever in my life.
Well, hold on. Here's what I would recommend. Do you know the page IMDb?
Yeah.
Okay, if you get the app and then look up Joker, they have a little section where you can look up why it has that rating. It'll tell you like if there's any frightening scenes, any cursing, stuff like that. That's what I usually do when people tell me.
I'm fine with cursing.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
we have friends who do that all the time.
If you go to the Joker's page, it'll tell you if there's any frightening scenes and what they are.
Okay. Well, but I'm not going to see it. And my mom, when she heard about it, she did not want me to see it at all. I wanted to see it. Everyone wanted to see it, but my mom did not want to see it because she knew what was going to happen.
Okay.
Sometimes mother knows best.
Yeah.
Well, I probably shouldn't say sometimes. My mom's probably going to come down and slap me. No, it's all the time. Even when I'm wrong, I'm right, son. And you're absolutely right. That was Meet the Robsons. I was going to say something, but I completely forgot what we're going to say. And yes, we're at the hour mark anyway. Oh yeah. I was going to end up with an interesting question for both of you.
Okay.
Yes. After all that we've talked about in regards to raising awareness for autism, having struggled with it and come to terms and accepting it and turning it into a strength, I'm not saying I'm a future teller, and I'm not saying that you are going to yet, but if you were to have children and they had some type of autism as well, how would you raise them?
I would raise them with love and care and make sure that they get good help and make sure that they're with good supports and never give up on them.
That's a good idea. Never give up on them. Yes. AJ?
Basically do what my mom did. Early intervene, get all the help they need, make sure like I'm always there for them and focusing on their needs, but also like you said, be firm. If they're doing something wrong, I have to punish them, but also like keep in mind they are thinking differently.
Yeah, that's at the end of the day that they truly are insightful spiritual beings. So, if I were to have children, most likely having some form of autism as well, I would have that spiritual sense of understanding them and approach that to them how I would approach certain problems, as well as tell them if we're doing something wrong or help them get over certain habits that they do over time. If I'm struggling, and this is something that we all learned the hard way during high school, as we all know, just ask for help.
Yeah, and also compare our life stories to our children's life stories and know that we struggle the same thing because we do have the same thing. So it's important for that.
Yes. We are one in this great circle of life. And with that, we are all connected in the great circle of life. And with that, till we find out. Like, this is how we end off, everybody.
It's the circle. It's the circle of life.
Boom. Don't you just love that drum at the end?
Yes.
It just goes right into your heart.
Well, see ya.
See ya, Space Cowboy.